Good evening, I'm Dike Rostant. Welcome back to the TTT News. It is a tall man conversation this evening. As his worship mayor of San Fernando, Junia Regrello, he joins us with academic, author, person who knows what it is to deal with a great deal of divas, Dr. Rudolph Ottley. It is time to go in depth on San Fernando City Week and the Calypso Fiesta. Welcome, gentlemen. Thank you so much for being a part of it. And let us start off with getting a definition, an overview of City Week, please, Mayor.
Well, last year we celebrated City Week and we dedicated a theme which was Day of the Arts. And we spent the past 12 months more or less looking at so many factors that contribute to the arts and development and the role that the arts have played in the evolution of San Fernando. And out of that was an approach by Dr. Ottley to document the history of Calypso Fiesta, which obviously is our signature event and is one that has really put San Fernando on the map. Dr. Ottley had started the research, so there was information that we could have worked with, and the collaboration started there.
And what were some of the other activities for the week of activities itself, Mayor?
Well, so many we had a third service and awards function where we were able to honor so many individuals based on their activity and their contribution to San Fernando. There's a folk character by the name of Clemmy George who passed sometime back in 1995. But Clemmy did so much for San Fernando as an iconic individual historian, mass player, mass presenter, designer, comedian, calypsonian, storyteller, history researcher, you name it, and Clemmy was that. We need to recognize Clemmy George. There was also, of course, Nicholas Paul, who's putting Trinidad and Tobago on the map as we speak on the cycling international cycling circuit. There's a Lakshmi Jewelers and High Street, third generation jewelers in San Fernando. And we had 3 members of staff who together would have contributed over 100 years of service to the corporation. But more importantly was we giving the keys to the city to Dr. Edmund Chamberlain, a game changer who served San Fernando over the past 50 years as a medical doctor, somebody in social services, a member of the Lions Club, head of the Scouting Association in San Fernando, home for the homeless persons, and you name it, and Dr. Chamberlain was there. So he's been given the keys for the city of San Fernando, an outstanding individual, and we must recognize him for his contribution over the years.
Thank you so much for that. Please.
We have also collaborated with NALIS to bring back a presence of the library in San Fernando. As you know, Library Corner, as is known all over, was because of the library's presence there. The library was built in 1916, and it went into very difficult times when Mr. Manning had a different plan for the library. So we'll be able to bring the library back there, the reference sections there, and that is painted red as the normal building was, and we're looking forward to participation, schools involvement. Where the libraries, there are 3 primary schools and 3 high schools, as the case may be. So the library has prominence and has a presence in at that space. That's another one of the events that we embarked on, and a standout event for me.
And speaking about the library, we want to bring Dr. Ottley in, but just before we do that, I will say, gentlemen, I started to feel like a big boy when I got permission to travel from Gasparilla to go to San Fernando to check out the library and just spend time there, and that was one of the highlights of my weekend for me. But Dr. Ottley, publication number 14, Calypso Fiesta, congrats. But what is the origin of Calypso Fiesta and its journey before it settled in San Fernando?
Well, basically it was designed to select the finalists for the Calypso King competition. And it started way back in 1956. But before that, there were some preceding shows at Rice Road in Port of Spain. But in terms of its journey to San Fernando, up to 1963, the Calypso Fiesta was held at the Queen's Park Savannah in Port of Spain. And coincidentally, I think the Naprimo Bowl was opened in that same year. And therefore, the government of the day felt it was wise to separate some of the major carnival activities, distribute them equally across the country. And for Carnival 1964, Calypso Fiesta was held for the first time in South at the Naprima Bowl. Then there was some journeys between Naprima Bowl and Skinner Park. In 1971, the first time Fiesta was held at Skinner Park was in 1971, due to a dispute between the Carnival Development Committee and Calypsonians, who staged their own protests show at Fiesta at Skinner Park in 1970, which was a tremendous success. And the CDC felt that if they could do it, why not move the show in 1971 to Skinner Park, which they did, but as you know how populist activities sometimes go, it failed miserably. And therefore, they resorted to taking the Fiesta back to Naprima Bowl, where it remained from 72 to 1977, when a fire destroyed parts of the bowl, and it was moved back to Skinner Park, where it has remained until 2019. So basically, that's the journey. But the important ingredient in that whole journey is the fact that to get to the Calypso Monarch of Trinidad and Tobago, you must go to the semi-final, and as the title says, you must go through San Fernando. If you can't make it in San Fernando, well, you can't make it on that Calypso stage.
The acid test.
The acid test, yes.
And with that, let me bring the mayor in. And what are your feelings about that in terms of, because I don't know if everyone knows, but I think there's some things that are happening in San Fernando, because as someone who would have been a mover and shaker in culture, you would have said, if I have the position, I will do this. And it seems that's my personal feeling with some of the things that we see happening in San Fernando and environs at this point in time. But in terms of that acid test, what are some of those takeaways that you have about Calypso Fiesta and just the energy that would put into the whole carnival atmosphere, Mayor?
All of us remember Marshall Montano in Pampa singing "I'm Too Young to Soca," and it's really been the breeding spot and where you will start. And if you don't make it there, you can't make it anywhere. Dennis Plummer had a hard time making a name for herself. Baron was booed at one time. Farah was booed at one time. And this is because it is where you more or less make or break in it. And Skinner Park has been for a long time, and San Fernando has been for a long time the cultural center where everybody will come together and more or less to establish themselves. So if you can make it Skinner Park, you can make it anywhere. And that's where you go and really get an opportunity to be tested by not just the San Fernando crowd, but people come from all over the world, establish their space, and you could go there. There's the Grenadian posse, the Jamaican posse, the North American posse, the European posse, the Miami posse, and it goes on and on and on. So that collaboration, that mixture, that diverse mixture of people who assemble there. And one must remember that San Fernando is central to the Deep South. It is central to Princeton, Rio Claro, Mayaro, which is southeast. It is central to the Couva, California, Claxton Bay, St. Margaret's, Pleasant Park, Marbella, and they congregate in San Fernando. So not just south, it's south by extension, it's the Southland. So, and we have produced so many outstanding Calypsonians. Lord Short, who came from Lengua Village, Dr. Leroy Callis from San Fernando Central, from just behind the library where he was born and grew up. And so many others that we have produced. Royan Lyon was born in San Fernando. Lord Melody has roots in San Fernando. And this mighty composer, so many Calypsonians who came through and made a name for themselves. Lord Superior from Rio Claro, Southern Roots, and it goes on and on and on and on and on. So San Fernando really is the Mecca and the birthplace, right, for Calypsonians who are able to go on and establish themselves in the savannah and elsewhere.
And we want to talk about the celebration. We want to talk about the celebration of the Mecca and the City Week when we return from this short break. We're speaking with Mayor Junia Regrello as well as Dr. Rudolph Ottley. Stay with us. Welcome back to In Depth, where we are discussing the recently concluded City Week with Mayor Junia Regrello as well as Dr. Rudolph Ottley. But take me through the process, Mayor, of implementing City Week during a pandemic?
Well, normally we would have a military parade where all the military arms will come to the city and with that pomp and ceremony. But because of the pandemic, we could not do that. However, we were able to establish events and involve persons in a way that will adhere to the guidelines outlined by the Ministry of Health. Of course, there will be financial constraints. So we were able to do several projects, and I will really want to commend and Dr. Ottley for coming on board with us with the launch of this book. We were able to collaborate on either side to ensure that it happened. So we were to identify groups who would have been able to make a contribution, was something to say, something to do, but at the same time, within the constraints and the confinement of COVID, we were able to do it. So we had several events and projects. We had a display of antique cars around San Fernando, but with the display of antique cars, we were able to make statements that would get vaccinated today. And so you had that and you had vehicles from 1920s, 1930s that have been more or less refurbished by individuals and for display. And so we had a drive through the city with that. And one of the curator of those vehicles also got an award for his interest and enthusiasm as somebody who has an interest in history and has a little mini museum at his home. So those type of things were identified and make it more central to the individuals in a very holistic way. As I said before, within the constraints of the pandemic.
And one of the things about a conversation like this is that anything you say, it can spark a conversation in a whole different direction. But looking at the way that you have really worked at giving people flowers, people talking about the street naming ceremonies. It did one for Dr. Leroy Callies, then one for Torrance Muhammad. What to you is the importance of saying, okay, well, these are the people who have made so much to this area, to this space, and we are going to sing your praises, and we are going to visually articulate this kind of fondness that we have for you? What is it about it that makes this something that is so important to you, Mayor?
Right. I recently, when you look at San Fernando, there's 7 streets in San Fernando named after the monarchy. There's Victoria Street, Prince Albert Street, Prince Alfred Street, Queen Street, King Street, all these type of things. And you look at the Royal Road, and you have to think, what is the significance of it? Now, at the same time, you don't want to move away from your history, but we have to look at persons who have shaped the landscape of the city of San Fernando, and it was only shaped by the royal family or the presidents or the former mayors. The persons who made considerable and significant contribution to our evolution and where we are today, particularly the arts and the creativity in the arts. So we look at those persons who sacrificed themselves. Dr. Callies, for instance, as a perfect example, who have put San Fernando on the map all over the world where he performed. His music as a poet, as a calypsonian, transcend and touch so many people and so many lives as an entertainer. You talk about Torrance Muhammad, who started dancing with Beryl McBurney in the 1950s, and Torrance have contributed to the Arawaks dance troupe. Torrance would have been able to spawn so many other dancers who are now established as far as Europe and North America, and making a name and a living for themselves. They established themselves because of the sacrifices and the commitment and the passion of Torrance Muhammad. Torrance didn't go up and form and make a dance group where he was training and people had to pay him. Torrance was concerned about generations to come and how do we get the art form outside there. And remember, we're talking about our local dance and things like that. When we dance in the Dike and the Europo and all forms of local and Caribbean dance, as the case may be. So we owe Terrence a debt of gratitude for what he has done. At his tribute, there were so many persons as far off who are now at a doctorate and trained and work in universities because of Terrence's commitment. So Terrence must be recognized for what he did, and so many others as we go along. As I said before, I saw recently where the British were able to remove from history Picton, Thomas Picton, for atrocities performed by him. We need to look at these things, and we need to look at our history. We just completed Black History Month. How do we tie that into our history, and how do we recognize those persons who have contributed and did so much for slavery and Black people and Black consciousness?
And speaking of tying in information, this is a beautiful opportunity to ask you, Dr. Ottley, what's the significance of this book that you would have just put so much sweat equity into, celebrating the efforts of others, and why is it that you wanted to launch the book at a time like this during City Week?
Well, it's a historical document, and if you're in the Calypso fraternity, there are always discussions as to who made it a fiesta, what year, how many times they made it, the songs they sang. And therefore, it's for the average person who is interested in that whole experience of fiesta. And it gives you a deep insight into what it is to be on that glorious Saturday, to be in San Fernando. And if you have not been there on that glorious Saturday, you certainly have missed part of your life. And therefore, it is ready to further propagate the value of San Fernando as a cultural part of the country, whereby they continue and consistently promote culture in Trinidad in its own unique way. Because since 1964, this one event was held in no other part of Trinidad but San Fernando. And I dare to challenge TUCO or the NCC or anybody to try and move that event from San Fernando.
And even like one of the things that when you hear and you say you're having conversations about who made it that year and who you find the thief and then who had a real big song and they don't know why they switch it out, this one for the finals, and then hearing about people like Joni and all these peoples and characters come to life. And it seems as though, as opposed to just, okay, well, this is a process to get to the finals, Calypso Fiesta is an entity unto itself, this entity, this experience. How do you respond to that?
Yeah, it's self-evolving, it has self-maintained, but I think the major thread that has kept it together has been the administrative support from the city of San Fernando, and that has continued this last couple of years through Mayor Junia Regrello. Because on its own, it will need some administrative support, it will need some guidance, and it will need buy-in from the community. The community needs no further buy-in. Once you announce Calypso Fiesta, people from San Fernando in particular are scheduled to be there. And it's also a meeting place. It's a place where old fire sticks are rekindled. Old you may laugh at what old friendships are made again. So that it gives an opportunity for people to really, most importantly, start the carnival. For some people, that's the start of their carnival. After that, they don't need to go anywhere.
I think stepping in as what Dr. Ottley says, also a revenue stream for the city of San Fernando. So many people have made their living, and you see the vendors start assembling from the night before. So it is important to the city of San Fernando, and I expect us to collaborate more with the ministry, and with TUCO as well, and push, and let's see how we can take this to a higher level. When Skinner Park is ready by next year, I think Carnival of 2023, God, let's work with you. I hope that it happens and we can take control of this COVID. Skinner Park will be ready and will be the most exciting thing for all of us in the Southland and by Trinidad and Tobago by extension, because Skinner Park has expanded, extended itself. It can accommodate a bigger crowd, and it has, I mean, all the avenues that you want to make it into a real mega show. And the potential that Fiesta has can now be realized with the advancement and the development and redevelopment of Skinner Park.
And speaking of further developments, Mayor, we want to thank you for this collaboration. Mayor Junia Regrello, we also want to thank you, Dr. Rudolph Ottley. You see, the danger of having a conversation like this with gentlemen like you is that you run out of time, and which we have done. So we want to thank you very much, gentlemen. On behalf of the entire TTT News team, we want to thank you for joining us on In Depth. Have a good one.